right.
Hey, so today I'm going to do a lot of definition type stuff. Okay, not much math work today. Look at some of them biases we talked about the other day. So we've got 5B today. We're looking at our statistics. And 5B goes over whether or not should you believe a statistical study. Okay, so we'll look at some common types of misuse of statistics. All right, so some of our misuses could be faulty polling, flawed correlations, data fishing, let me make that get a little static in there today. Oh, let's see what else. Misleading data visualization. Purposeful and selective bias. Remember, bias is when you favor stuff, right? Some people might be biased because they're really strong for it or favoring it. Oh, the last one, using percentage of change in combination with a small sample size. And the reason that one's there because if you've got a small sample, the differences between each sample will be large. So we need more samples to eliminate like that from the percentage. Okay? All right, so evaluating a statistical study. All right, so on this I had even when a statistical research is carried out with integrity and care, there are so many complex factors involved that bias can arise in many ways. So we're going to look at 8 guidelines. That can help you answer, should I believe in statistical study? Should I believe a statistical study? And these are 4 recent guidelines on this. So the first guideline, you want to get a big picture view of the study. So get a big picture view of the study. So what I mean by that, what was the goal of the study? What was the population under study? Was it clearly and appropriately defined? Was the study an observation or an experiment? Remember, observations, you're just watching. Experiments, you try to change those outcomes. Okay? If it's an experiment, was it single blind or double blind? All right, guideline number 2. Consider the source. The people who carried out this study, were they biased? You got to worry about people being biased when you're doing statistics, okay? Because they can really influence those outcomes big time. Number 3, you're going to look for bias in the sample. So we got what we call selection bias. I'll write these down for you. So we got selection bias. Selection bias occurs when the researchers select their sample in a way that tends to make it unrepresentative of the population. You know, if I was wanting to get a large female sample, but I was considering a sample of all male and female, but if I went strong on female, it might tend to lead my data in a certain favorable direction that I'm wanting to go in. Okay? So these samples, they got to be randomly drawn, representative of the population you want to sample. Okay? Also, we got participation bias. That occurs primarily with surveys and polls. Okay, and it arises whenever people choose to participate. So, since you're the ones actually determining your results, the bias would be determined by the participant versus the person selecting. Okay. All right, number 4, you look for problems in defining or measuring the variables of interest. So look for problems in defining or measuring the variables of interest. So what is a variable? A variable in our case is any item or quantity. So any item or quantity that can vary or take on different values. Sort of like if I was looking for an average height in here, the height would be a variable. It can have different amounts, right? It can have different values. So when we're looking at the variables are the items we want to actually measure. Okay. I might do a survey like, how much do you pay for your cell phone a month? To start asking people how much they're paying on their cell phone. My variable would actually be the price of those cell phones, right? That's what I want to measure, okay? Number 5. Beware of confounding variables. So what they mean by that, variables that are not intended to be part of the study can sometimes make it difficult to interpret the results properly. Such variables are often called confounding variables because they confound or confuse the study's results. Six, consider the setting and wording in surveys. So even when a survey is conducted with proper sampling and with clearly defined terms and questions, it is important to watch out for problems in the setting or wording that might produce inaccurate or dishonest responses. So wording should be neutral. So remember that. Wording should be neutral. Not judgmental or leading. What I mean by leading is trying to get you to choose one particular answer over another answer. Okay? Trying to lead you into that response.
Is that judgmental for numbers?
Not judgmental.
Okay.
Oh, maybe I missed
it. For
there, right?
G.
Okay. Not judgmental. All right, let's see. Number 7, we're going to check that results are presented fairly. So the study may be misrepresented in graphs or including statements. Researchers may misinterpret the results or jump to conclusions not supported by the results. especially if they got a little bias and they're wanting it to come in their favor when they're done. Ooh, you gotta watch that, okay? They might take all this data and interpret it in their favor. All right, last one. Stand back and consider the conclusion. And when you do that, you just ask yourself the following question. Did study achieve its goals? So did study achieve goals? Do the conclusions make sense? Can you rule out alternative explanations for the results? And then finally, if the conclusions do make sense, do they have any practical significance? If conclusions do make sense, do they have any practical significance? All these big words for math people get us something. And y'all, that's basically the lecture of 5B, just going through those steps. Now I want to tell you sort of some of the questions you'll see in the 5B homework that they want to ask.
You drink that Mountain Dew with caffeine flavor.
I know.
Why do you drink that Mountain Dew with caffeine flavor?
Well, no, we can't give people.
Almost 7.
All right, so on this example, this is homework 5B. On this example, based solely on the information given, is there a reason to question the results or the method? Explain the reason. So my question is, for number one, a survey of hourly wages of fast food workers in a large city samples 20 workers from each of 10 fast food restaurants. So that is the information they gave me. So the first question we want to know, the results and method are blank because blank. And I'll read what we want to fill into the blank. So the resultant method are either valid or not valid. So you consider this valid or invalid. They're taking 10
Valid.
restaurants, and from each of them 10 restaurants, they're surveying 20 workers. So overall, you got a fairly large sample size of 200 people, right? So that would be considered valid, right? We're going to the 10 largest companies. So we're going to say, oops. Valid. Okay. Now, on the because part, here's the 4 answers they're giving me. Because the entire sample is large and diverse. Because 20 workers are not enough to form a meaningful conclusion. Because 10 restaurants are not enough to form a meaningful conclusion. Or because only fast food workers were sampled. But we said this was valid, right? So we want to have a reason that would strengthen our validity of this. So how about the entire sample is actually large and diverse? Going from 10 different restaurants, 20 people from each. So you got a 200-person sample. Okay? And all we're looking at is the hourly wage. So would you figure 200 people would give you a good idea of the hourly wages of a fast food worker? Sort of, wouldn't it? Now, I could have went to McDonald's, got one person, went to another place, got a person. But depending on have they been at that restaurant a while or not, might affect their wages. Okay. So we're going to say the entire sample is large and diverse. So these are sort of what I call thinking type questions, logical type stuff. Okay. So let me give you one like number 2 here. Based solely on the information given again, do you have reason to question the results of the following hypothetical study? A study by a conservative foundation is designed to assess, or is designed to assess a new Democratic spending plan. Is there a reason to question the results? And it gives you some reasons. So A says, yes, there's reason, because there is a possibility of bias in the study. B says, no, there is not a reason. The goal of the study is clear. C says, no, there is not a reason. It is unlikely that there are any confounding variables in the study. D says, yes, there is reason. It makes sense that a Democratic spending plan would be studied by a conservative foundation. E says, yes, there is reason. The variables that were measured are not identified. And then F says, no, there is not a reason. There is no bias in the study. Well, what would lead me to thinking about bias? Because you're looking at a conservative foundation, right? And they want to assess the new Democratic spending plan. So on that go, I went, yes, there was a reason for bias. Okay. And I put, because there's a possibility of bias in the study. Okay. Now, they said a study by a group of conservative and maybe liberal foundations or something. But that conservative would lead me to think that they might push these results in their favor versus the general view of people survey. Okay? So there's possibility of bias. And we didn't even talk about variables on that, right? So there couldn't be those things we'll be talking about variables. So, hey, are you on homework? Is it pretty much what you're doing? They changing the button like? Oh, okay.
The question
Oh, okay. So you can order out, but the actual questions are the same. Well, then it's good because it's fast, right? All right, same thing, based on the information given. So, this one says to gauge public opinion on whether there should be a constitutional amendment to ban capital a survey asked people do you support legalized murder? I guess I think English should go first. Question mark before thinking. So would that be valid? I want to know if you think there should be a constitutional amendment to ban capital punishment. Do you think that's a good question to ask people? Do you support legalized murder? When they ask it in that way, they're really wanting you to say, I want this amendment. I want to ban capital murder because I don't want to support legalized murder, right? Could have been maybe better. Do you support death penalties as a punishment or something, you know? Well, that's really getting biased when they're using words like legalized murder, okay? So on that, I said that was not valid. So they could have just asked about the capital punishment, okay? And what I said was this right here, the survey question is misleading, okay? So the survey question is misleading. Y'all sure understand that question? Okay. All right, number 4 for me. Identify any possible sources of bias. So we're going to identify any possible sources or potential sources of bias. So the study they gave me, an exit poll, so an exit poll designed to predict the winner of a local election uses voluntary surveys with every Republican who votes between 7 and 9:30 a.m. So, what sources of bias, if any, might this study have? Now remember, we're looking at stuff like participation bias and selection bias, okay? So let's look through here. An exit poll was designed to predict the winner of a local election, uses voluntary surveys with every Republican to vote between 7 and 9:30. That is definitely selection bias, right? But also we got participation bias.
This doesn't say anything about operating covenants, by the way, but it doesn't say anything about Republican. It just says design to predict the winner of local election uses voluntary surveys. So
All who vote, yeah. So I put things like this.
I mean, the answer is the same.
Yes.
That's very
Mhm.
might confuse.
And the thing is, they're just taking those Republican voters, right? They're not taking your Democratic voters. And they're only looking at Republicans that voted between a certain time. So yours is pretty close to mine then. So yours, did you go with both?
Yeah.
Mine, both selection and participation bias. And the reason to do a participation because you can say, oh, I voted for the Republican or I voted for the Democrat. Because you know they're looking at the Republican people on this, okay? I can lie. Say I went Republican, but I might have actually been Democrat. So you'll notice a lot of times when they're actually doing big elections, they'll do those kind of exit polls. A lot of times they're pretty close, but once again, you got to look at who are they surveying? Are they surveying everybody that's coming out of this polling station? Or just a certain group of people? All right, so questions on those? That's stuff you're going to sort of see in the homework. Okay? It's just going to look at maybe the bias, and whether we should be valid or invalid on these surveys. So any of these didn't get done?
No.
You got them all done? No. All right, so let me see what we got. Oh, so y'all get to do a little math next class. We're going to be doing frequencies and making frequency tables and all that stuff. Looking at different graphs, like bar graphs, stuff like that, pie charts. So we'll actually get more into this stuff. This is just getting us ready so that we know if these surveys were valid or invalid. Okay. All right, so we got my new project. It's not easy. All right, any questions online? What I got?
No.
Yeah. I had another one while going. Oh, okay, I got Carla and Tommy. Let me get y'all names. Hey, wait.
For the project, like it wasn't that.
Oh, you man.
Yeah, yeah.
Just send me the file back. Yeah.
Okay, so I got.
But you might have to download it first. But that's like going off of mine. Now pick that here where it says the bottom corner. Once that field loads up, it'll open, and then it'll allow you to edit it and change it. Now enable edit. Now put in your numbers and go. Now it. So you just got to actually download the actual file and then enable editing and run. All right, so y'all don't have any more questions, just short day. Next class, we're going to get a little deeper with us. We're going to start doing some statistics. Have y'all ever done frequency? So frequency is how many times? Like if I was looking at the height in here, some going 6 foot and 2 or 3 6-footers, they have a frequency of 3 out of the 10 or whatever. You notice once you're done with a frequency table, the total frequencies you add up should equal the total number of samples you had and stuff. So when we look at, we call those type of graphs histograms. It shows all the different responses and how many times did they happen and stuff. And it's easier to look at all the data and want to do a chart sometimes than looking at all the numbers laid out in a spreadsheet or something. So I'm almost back on track with my original due dates. I think I was one assignment behind last week. We got all the way to 5A. We didn't get to 5B. So this week we should be getting all caught back up with that original schedule. From the ice storm of 21. All right, y'all. So I'll shut it down, and I will see y'all Thursday. I mean.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
All right, y'all have a good one.
You too.